Okay, so the final piece to the JDM BFS puzzle has finally arrived, and I'll tell you what, this reminds me a lot of the year 2016, which was a really big and exciting year for the bait finesse world, and that's because Shimano came out with their legendary 2016 Aldebaran BFS, and also Abu Garcia came out with the REVO LTX BF8 as well as the REVO ALC BF7. So fast forward to today, which is 2022, and you know, a few months ago Shimano came out with their new Aldebaran BFS, and we have a new top of the line BFS reel from Abu Garcia, and we also have a new top of the line BFS reel coming from KASTKING called the Kestrel, which is on its way to me right now. So I'm getting vibes of 2016 all over again. It is a good time to be in a bait finesse. Probably the best time ever with all the choices that we have for bait finesse reels. And I'm talking all price points. So I got this from Japan Lure Shop. So if you're interested in getting this reel as well as the other new Abu Garcia reels that have just come out, they are available at Japan Lure Shop. I'll leave a link to their website. There we go, ZENON. And this is a pretty big box, and it's pretty freaking heavy. I wonder why this box is so heavy. And of course at Japan Lure Shop you get a free gift, which is, what is this? Ooh, it's a JACKALL revoltage jerkbait. I don't think that color will work around here, but I might give this away to a subscriber in a future giveaway. Alright, let's get to the reel. The ZENON LTX. And this is a massive, massive box. This thing is huge. Let me grab a box from a competitor reel just to show you the difference. Alright, so here's the box for a DAIWA TATULA 80. Good lord, this ZENON box is twice as big. So hopefully he sent me the right box and didn't send me a spinning reel. But wow, it's packaged really nice. Let's see what we got. Holy damn. Okay, so this box comes with this, I guess, hard cloth box, and it's got ZENON in what appears to be carbon, and it's not taped very well onto the box there. I just pressed it in, but wow, definitely not getting this with a Shimano Aldebaran or a DAIWA air reel or even the CONQUEST BFS. Okay, so you got a little bag here. Okay, ZENON LTX looks good. You got oil, you got zipper compartments. Wow, this packaging so far is top notch. Very impressed, but boom. ZENON LTX. Take a look at this thing. Alright, let me move this package out of here, but wow, very impressed with what this reel comes with. Typical Abu Garcia, well, I should say typical JDM Abu Garcia, they give you quite a lot for your money. But yeah, let's take a look at this reel. It's smaller than I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be much bigger because I'm assuming they're using the Roxani platform. We're gonna compare that here in a second. Check a look at that shape. Got these new knobs. Oh, you heard that. Smooth enough. Abu Garcias are not really known for exceptional smoothness, and I can feel the gears. It feels like maybe the gears could use some grease, but it is perfectly smooth out of the box. Check out that side plate. It's a good looking side plate. Alright fellas, I'm going to do my customary inspection, take notes of all the little details I can see, and I'll be right back. Okay, so before we get into the design and features and specs of this reel, I just want to go over a couple of things. Now the first thing is, due to the fact that I have had so many REVOs, I'm probably going to call this reel a REVO more than once in this video. But it's not a REVO, it is a ZENON. And number two, this reel is not to be mistaken for the ZENON MG-LTX reel, which is being sold here in America. That's a general purpose bass fishing reel, while this is a bait finesse reel designed for salt water. Now that reel has got a different braking system, different spool, different frame material, and it's also much more expensive. So this is not the ZENON MG-LTX that you'll see on Tackle Warehouse, as well as probably several other online retailers here in America. So it's time to go over the specs and features of this reel, and to do that, let's move the reel aside and we're going to bring out the nice fancy box. Okay, so bearings, a total of 10. Gear ratio, it only comes with one gear ratio, which is 8.3 to 1, and that's in both right and left hand. Inches per turn is 31 or 78 centimeters. Drag, maximum is 11 pounds or 5 kilos. And while that seems excessive for bait finesse, keep in mind this is a BFS reel designed for salt water. And as long as the drag is smooth and starts up easy, 11 pounds is perfectly acceptable. Weight, they're claiming it weighs 5.3 ounces or 150 grams, and we're going to check that later. Mono capacity, so you're looking at 50 meters of 8-pound mono, if the mono is that diameter, and that's pretty standard for BFS reels, at least JDM ones. Braid capacity, so I guess 1 gauge PE, you're going to be able to hold a whopping 100 meters. So this is for all you braid guys. Now if we flip the box over, you see a bunch of, I guess, features or whatnot in different languages, and we're looking for English. Okay, here we go. So it says 9 stainless steel HPCR bearings plus 1 roller bearing, and HPCR stands for high performance corrosion resistant. It says 2 additional ceramolite spool bearings, so that's cool. Apparently the spool bearings are, I guess, some kind of a ceramic hybrid, but either way they appear to be the same type of bearings that you find in the REVO MGX Stream 2. X-Craftic alloy frame for increased corrosion resistance, carbon matrix drag system, C6 carbon side plates, MagTrax 3 brake system, gives consistent brake pressure throughout the cast, compact bent carbon handle, aircraft grade aluminum main gear, titanium coated line guide, recessed reel foot, lube port, custom lightweight handle knob design, carbon star drag design. So now that we've went over the basic on-paper specs, let's take a closer look at this reel and check out the design and go over some of the non-listed features. Now, it is a very, I guess, conservative color with this kind of dark silver, and it's definitely not a reel that if you stick it down in a group of today's current BFS reels, it'll attract your attention first, versus let's say something like a DAIWA Gecko Vision Air. It's very subtle and understated, but it's also very handsome, especially when you take time to look at the details, like this palm side plate. That is a good looking palm side plate. A lot of nice molding and etching, a lot of angles, and even on the other side with the handle side plate, it's that way as well. Definitely not a dull looking reel as far as the side plates go. Now let's take a look at the carbon on this reel, because there's a lot. It's got a pretty generic looking carbon fiber handle that you'll probably find on dozens of other reels. Now it is swept and it is 85 millimeters. And the carbon fiber drag star is carried over from the previous LTX. Of course it does click. And there is carbon fiber inside the little aluminum trim piece that covers the gearbox. Speaking of aluminum trim pieces, that trim piece does look really, really nice. Very subtle and understated, but very nice machining there. It is aluminum. And here's the spool tension, which is typical ABU. It's got the 3 dots and the emblem of the King of Sweden, which is kind of funny for this being a JDM reel. Now of course it does click, but it is the same mushy, vague clicks that you're going to find in previous ABU reels. Definitely not as positive feeling as a DAIWA reel that would have a spool tension clicker, or even a Shimano reel that would have a spool tension clicker. Now, of course, the base of the drag star is aluminum. It's got your gear ratio and inches per turn on there. But check out this aluminum piece that's probably going to get overlooked by most, and that is the nose piece right here. This is aluminum. If the camera can focus, but check out the front of it. Hopefully you guys could see that it's two-tone. Now right here it's silver, but the rest of it is black. So that's pretty cool. Definitely not something that you'll probably see or pick up on in pictures or video. It's something that only owners will see if they take time to inspect and take a look at the design features of their reel. Now, one of the major improvements that I see are these new knobs. Now, normally in the past they would use EVA foam knobs that were pretty big in size, but these are much smaller, much flatter, and in my opinion much more comfortable and more suited for bait finesse. Now they're not really as soft as the Septon knobs of a Shimano, or even the rubber coating on the knobs of the current DAIWA reels, but they are very comfortable. And the reason they went with these type of knobs was to save weight, because what this is a rubber coating over a plastic piece that's been hollowed out. And let's look at the knob end caps. So this is the, I guess, slanted rectangle of the Abu Garcia logo with that little line going through the top. But they're chrome plated and much better looking, in my opinion, than the current REVO designs. So big improvement there. Now you can see they went with an asymmetrical thumb bar design like Shimano, but even though it's got some etching for grip, I feel they should have made it chrome plated at least, because this black plastic looks cheap. Now, one thing the spec sheet didn't tell you was that they implemented some kind of pinion support. Now, I couldn't tell whether it's 2 bearing or just 1 bearing, but now there's pinion support in this ZENON LTX. And also, the main gear is much bigger than the previous REVO. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a graphic on the screen for you just to show you how much bigger the main gear is. And the only thing I can think of is to improve the power of this reel. Now, because they're using the Roxani frame that's longer than the previous REVO, they're able to stick the line guide out much further. And I'm going to put up a graphic on the screen for you guys that'll show you how much farther the line guide is out in relation to the spool versus the old REVO, and how much of a decrease in, I guess, friction angle that you're going to get because of that. Now, another thing that they've changed with this reel is they went with an asymmetrical palm plate design, where the palm side plate is a little bit shorter than the gear side plate, to give you the feel of the reel being smaller than it is. Now, I mounted this reel on one of my Shimano rods, and it is indeed very, very comfortable. And because they went with a recessed reel seat, it sits really, really low, even lower than the LX992Z, which pretty much shares the same frame. And with that being said, let me show you the size comparison between this ZENON LTX versus its rivals. Okay, so the first rival I'm going to compare it to is going to be the DAIWA Alphas Air TW. And surprisingly, they look pretty similar. The ZENON is definitely wider with that bulge on the side plate, but if you ignore the top part, they look very similar in length. Now let's switch up sides here and see if that is still the perception. Now from this side, the ZENON definitely looks bigger, longer and wider. But if you flip them on the side, I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm lining up the reel seats, but the ZENON is lower. That's that recessed reel foot. They were really focusing on palming comfort with this new ZENON LTX. Now next up is a reel that I really wouldn't consider it a competitor to the ZENON, but with the yen being so weak against the dollar, when you factor in sales tax, they actually are pretty close in price, and that is Shimano's CURADO BFS. And from this angle, it looks like the CURADO is about the same size. Could be just the trick of different colors, but if we switch them up, it looks like the ZENON is bigger. So I guess whatever reel is going to be on the right, at least with this camera, is going to look like the bigger reel. But this is what it looks like compared to the CURADO BFS, which is one of the smallest bait finesse reels out on the market. Height wise, they are pretty similar. Yeah, very, very similar. I can't really tell which one is lower, but that bodes good for the LTX. Now next up is going to be probably the ZENON's biggest competitor, and that's going to be Shimano's new 2022 ALDEBARAN BFS. And they look very similar, but once I switch sides, they still look kind of similar, but the ZENON looks a little bit longer. I think it's because we can look directly at the top piece where you really can't on the ALDEBARAN, but very, very similar looking, which is really surprising. I thought the ZENON LTX would be a much bigger reel. Okay, so the next reel I'm going to compare to is the reel that it's replacing, which is the REVO LTX BF8, and you can really see the difference in shape between these two reels. The REVO is more of a square, while the ZENON is more of a rectangle. Yep, the ZENON is definitely the longer reel. They're about the same width, but let's take a look at the height difference, which they're claiming is about 1 millimeter shorter versus the REVO, and it looks like they've hit their mark. It's definitely lower than the REVO. But you can also see how much farther out the line guide is in relation to the spool. Alright, so the last reel I'm going to compare sizes with is a reel that is based on the same platform. That is Abu Garcia's own LX992Z, and from this angle the LX992Z definitely looks bigger. It looks wider, looks a little bit longer. Well, maybe the ZENON looks longer, but what happens when we switch up sides here? Yeah, the LX992Z still looks a little bit bigger. Could be the fact that it's a different color. The black looks bigger than the silver, but you can definitely see the difference in how the back of the reels are different. The palming side plate of the ZENON is definitely shorter back here, while it's the same on the LX992Z. But yeah, when I mount the LX992Z on the same rod, it does feel taller than the ZENON LTX. So their improvements in palming comfort have worked. But now it's time to get to the nitty-gritty, and we're gonna get a weight on the reel as well as finally get a weight on this spool. So before we get a weight on the spool, we gotta get a weight on the reel, of course. And just to reiterate, the engineers at Abu Garcia were not focusing on making this the lightest bay finesse reel in the world. They were focused on other things, but since this is a saltwater BFS reel, they had to use the aluminum frame. So they're claiming 5.3 ounces on the box. The scale says 5.33, which I'll take that. But here's the REVO LTX BF8, the reel it's replacing, and you're looking at 4.64. So you're looking at over half an ounce difference between the two, and I can say you can feel it, but coming in at 5.3 ounces, this reel is still very, very lightweight. In fact, I think the only reels JDM wise that are lighter than this ZENON is going to be the DAIWA STEEZ Air and the ALDEBARAN BFS. So let's get to this spool. Okay, so I got the spool scale out, and we are finally gonna get a weight on this spool, which is something I've been wanting to do ever since they announced this reel several months ago. Now, to access a spool, I guess you just flip that latch, which takes a little bit of effort to do, which is good, and doesn't twist. Okay, yeah, it just pulls right out. And take a look at that. They're still sticking with the static mag track style system, which we'll go into here in just a second. But yeah, take a look at this. That's very interesting. Now let's pull the spool out and let's take a look at it. Now the first thing that I noticed immediately is they're going with that long Shimano style spool shaft. But one thing I also noticed immediately is that it appears to be made of steel instead of aluminum. I could have swore that, I guess in the prototype reels, the pictures that I saw, that this was made of aluminum and not steel. Is it steel? It feels cold. It's got the color of steel, but other than that, it looks very much like the previous Abu Garcia bait finesse reels in the fact that it's got the, I guess, pill-shaped porting, and it's got a little indention in the center of the spool. But this spool has got some big shoes to fill, because the previous LTX BF8 and ALC BF7 had the lightest spools stock-wise in bait finesse history at 6 grams up until only last year when they came out with the Dark Wolf Ultra and the Black Knight 2, and then of course this year the 22 ALDEBARAN came out with a slightly lighter spool. So yeah, this spool has got some big shoes to fill weight wise, and one thing they did, I'm trying to feel it, it feels pretty heavy guys, I'm not gonna lie, but they shrunk the size down from 32 millimeters to 30, and I pulled the spool out of the REVO LTX BF8 and you can see the size difference, but you can also see the difference in the metal plate there that interacts with the magnets, and you can also see the spool shaft of the REVO. It's got that slightly darker color which signifies it's aluminum. So holding them side by side, even though this is a smaller spool, it feels much heavier, and that is hugely disappointing. Now, did I get some kind of a reel that got mistakenly put with a stainless steel spool shaft instead of aluminum? Well, let's not beat around the bush anymore. Let's turn this scale on and get a weight. Okay, so the previous spool comes in at 7.57 grams with the bearing, and without the bearing it comes in at an even 6 grams. Okay, so ZENON LTX. What? 12.08, so almost 12.1 grams. Is that a mistake? Damn, that is a massive disappointment. And let me tell you why. Now, when they were interviewing the Abu Garcia pro staffer who helped design this reel, even though it was designed for salt water, he was touting that this will cast 1 gram easily, and it even casted 0.4 grams with no problem. And even though this 12 gram weight is with the bearing, when I take that bearing off, which I'm going to do here in a second, we're probably looking at a 10.5 gram spool. And unless they've done some, I guess, wizardry with the bearings on this reel or the braking system, there is no way this reel is going to cast 1 gram easily, let alone half a gram. So let me pull this bearing out and we'll get a true weight on this spool. And I'm also going to go online and see if any Japanese YouTubers unbox this reel and see if they have a reel with stainless steel spool shafts as well, or if theirs are aluminum and if theirs weigh just as much as mine. Okay, so just for academic reasons, I went ahead and pulled off the spool bearing, and we're going to get a weight of the spool without the bearing. Yep, and just as I suspected, 10.5 grams. So just to put that into context, the REVO UltraCast BF8 has a lighter spool than this supposedly top of the line ZENON LTX, and that is a huge disappointment. Now, I went on Google and YouTube and I tried to see if any of the Japanese fishing bloggers have done videos or written articles about their ZENON LTX, but I couldn't find any. And it's probably because the reel is just too new, but also the fact that the 22 ALDEBARAN BFS is still taking all the attention in the bait finesse world, just like back in 2016. So hopefully there will be some more news or information about this spool coming out very soon, because I really would like to know if my spool is like a factory defect with its stainless steel shaft. Now, while we have the side plate off, let's talk about the braking, which is one area which they say they really tried to improve upon versus the previous LTX. And to further illustrate the improvements they tried to make, I pulled out the side plate of the old REVO LTX. Now, the old REVO LTX was an extremely high performing but flawed bait finesse reel. Now, if the conditions were absolutely perfect, meaning no wind or a slight backwind, it could outcast even the mighty 2016 ALDEBARAN BFS. But if there was just a hint of wind, the spool would blow up. if you weren't ready for it. And of course, out fishing, the wind dies down and kicks up all the time. So the brakes on the old reel were borderline too weak, and also another problem it had was there was not a lot of braking power in reserve. So what I mean by that is that it doesn't matter how heavy the lure is, whether it be 1 gram or 5 grams, the lowest you could really go on the brakes of the REVO was probably no more than 4 or 5 clicks past its maximum position. So right around there. Doesn't matter how heavy the lure was. Now if you wanted to go down to like 1 gram, which I've tried with this reel, you had to really turn the brakes to maximum, and you would still have to thumb the spool a little bit, so there was no braking power in reserve. And that's even with 10 magnets, and 5 of these magnets you can remove if you want to, I guess, adjust the amount of magnetism depending on what you're casting. So on the new LTX, all the magnets are pre-installed. I don't think you can remove them, but there's only 8, but there appears to be 2 extra little holes if you want to add extra. But it seems that Abu Garcia knew about the weaknesses of the previous LTX, and they said that braking performance was one of the most important things they were trying to design into this new LTX. And that was, they wanted to make the brakes more stable and less finicky than the previous LTX, and they state that they wanted to give it a wider, I guess, range of adjustment or usability. So kind of like the current ALDEBARAN BFS, they wanted this reel to be able to, I guess, dip down into its lower brake settings. Now, incidentally, this brake dial does have, I think, 27 clicks, so there's a total of 28 settings on this adjustment dial, just like the old one. But I guess only on the water casting will decide to see if they've hit their goal. And that may be one of the reasons why they went with this bigger magnetic plate versus the much smaller magnetic plate of the old reel. They wanted more metal for the magnets to conduct that magnetic current. But still, I mean, how can they overcome 4.5 grams of weight of this new spool over the old one? It just doesn't make sense. So before we go over my final thoughts and end this video, there is one feature that I purposely didn't go over and I say for last. And can you guess what that is? Now if you guessed clicking drag, then you guessed correct. And let me let you guys hear that again. So compared to other reels that have clicking drags, this clicking drag is extremely loud, and it sounds, I don't know, it sounds kind of cheap. It sounds even different than the clicking drag on the LX992Z, which it should be the same, so maybe there's a different mechanism. But here's the sound of the clicking drag on the LX992Z. It's more muted, but it does sound more refined. Here's the clicking drag on the Geckovision Air from DAIWA. Definitely more muted and definitely sounds more metallic. And here's the clicking drag on the ALDEBARAN BFS. It's definitely louder than the Geckovision and the LX992Z. But against the new ZENON, God, this thing is loud. So if you like loud drag clickers, then this might be the reel for you. So to wrap up this video and go over my final initial thoughts, to say that I'm extremely shocked and let down by that massive spool weight of this reel is an understatement. The ZENON is supposed to be the top of the line Abu Garcia baitcaster, and this reel is priced to compete with the likes of the 2022 Shimano Aldebaran, DAIWA's Gekabijin Air, and it might be even more expensive than the Alpha's Air. So when you consider those reels have spools that are much lighter, and then when you consider the fact that there are Chinese AliExpress reels like the Dark Wolf Ultra that have spools that weigh half as much, it really makes me wonder if there was some kind of factory error with my particular reel. Now, I said before, I looked on YouTube and Googled reviews of this reel and there's nothing out there, but there is a Japanese YouTuber that did a review of the ZENON MG7, and when he weighed that spool, it was 9 grams with the bearing, and I could clearly see that the spool shaft of his reel was aluminum. So what I'm going to do is, instead of spooling this reel up and taking it out, because, you know, who knows, maybe it can cast 1 gram easily, because I did see a video of a guy doing that in Japan, but then again, he didn't pull the spool out and weigh it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a picture of the spool on the scale, and I'm going to email the shop that I bought this from, and I'm going to have them contact Abu Garcia Japan to see if this is correct. And if he emails me back and lets me know that Abu Garcia Japan says that's the correct spool weight, the shaft is supposed to be made of stainless steel, then I'm going to string it up and take it out and test it. But for now, this is going to sit until I hear back from Japan Lure Shop. And that's hugely disappointing because I really wanted to take this reel out trout fishing tomorrow. But I guess I'm going to have to test out something else. But the good news is the KASTKING Kestrel Elite BFS reel should be here within a week or so. And there's no way that reel can let me down as much as this reel. So for those of you who have been eyeballing getting one of these reels, you may want to wait until I hear back from Japan Lure Shop. Alright guys, thanks a lot.